Hey everyone, and welcome to the show. Ever feel like no matter how much you're hustling and pushing, you just can't seem to reach that place of true happiness or contentment?
Yeah, like you always striving for more and it's never quite enough.
Totally. And then you start to think, well, maybe something's wrong with me, you know?
Oh, absolutely. That constant inner critic telling you you're not doing enough, not being enough.
So relatable, and that's exactly what we're going to unpack today in our deep dive.
Yep, get right into it.
Our source material today is this really fascinating nonfiction book by Kate Williams called How to Stop Trying.
Such a great title, right?
I know, right? And don't worry, we've got the Amazon link down in the description if you want to check it out.
Yeah, go grab a copy.
But this isn't your typical, fluffy self-help book.
Oh, no, not at all.
Williams really goes deep digging into societal expectations, the pressures we all internalize, and how we can be so hard on ourselves.
Yeah, and I think what's so refreshing about her approach is that she doesn't shy away from vulnerability.
Right? Like she shares her own personal struggles and experiences.
Exactly. She weaves in these really honest anecdotes alongside these insightful observations about the culture we live in.
And it's all about understanding why this constant striving can actually be counterproductive,
Yeah.
you know?
Totally. It's like we're on this hamster wheel of achievement, but it's not actually leading us to fulfillment.
Okay, so let's start with this foundational concept that Williams explores the myth of constant trying,
Oh, okay, love this.
right? Because we're constantly told to never give up. Persistence is key.
Oh, yeah, those messages are everywhere.
And it's like effort equals worth. And I feel like that message particularly hits hard for women.
Absolutely. There's this deep-seated belief that our value is directly tied to how much we're doing, how much we're pushing ourselves.
And Williams really challenges this head on with some very personal stories.
Like that one about the swim team, right?
Yes, the swim team in high school.
She was miserable. She wasn't even good at it.
I know, but she felt this obligation to keep going.
It's like quitting was not an option.
She even talked about how she'd be in the pool, freezing her butt off.
Chlorine green with envy watching The Price is Right on the TV in the distance.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and in races, she was always so far behind that even the parents of the opposing team would be like, good job,
Yeah.
just for finishing.
Oh, that's hilarious, but also kind of sad.
It's like she felt this pressure to just endure the discomfort because quitting was equated with failure.
And that's a really powerful point that she makes. It's not always about just pushing through no matter what.
Right. Sometimes knowing when to quit is actually the smarter move.
Exactly. It's about recognizing when something isn't serving you and having the courage to walk away.
And it makes you think, who benefits from this constant pressure to never quit?
Good question.
Because sometimes it's not even for our own benefit.
Often it's for someone else's.
Like those individuals or institutions that need us to keep going for their goal.
That's so true. We can get caught up in someone else's agenda without even realizing it.
It's a real wake-up call. And it makes you look at your own life.
Totally.
That project at work that's draining you, that hobby that no longer brings you joy.
That relationship that's become more of a burden than a source of support.
Exactly. Are we holding on out of fear or because we think it's what we're supposed to do?
I think it's so important to ask ourselves that question, is this truly serving me? Or am I just afraid of what people will think if I quit?
Right, because true strength isn't always about pushing through. It's about recognizing when to pivot, when to reevaluate.
Absolutely. And that takes a lot of self-awareness.
Okay, now let's talk about another big theme that Williams tackles, internalized misogyny and this concept of the good girl syndrome.
Yeah, this is such an important topic, and it might sound a bit academic at first.
Right, it can sound a little jargony.
But she really breaks it down with these relatable stories and examples.
And it's essentially about how we internalize these negative messages about women and start to judge ourselves and other women by those same standards.
Exactly, like those societal expectations become our own inner voice.
And she has this really powerful anecdote about her experience at a strip club.
Oh, yeah, I remember this one.
So at first she's trying to be all cool and unfazed.
Like, I'm totally accepting of this. I see sex work as legitimate work.
But then she has this moment where she judges another woman really harshly.
Like, almost instinctively.
And she realizes it's this classic case of internalized slut shaming.
And she's so honest about it, which is so refreshing.
It is. It's like she's calling herself out and helping us recognize
Yeah.
those moments in ourselves, too.
Because internalized misogyny can be so subtle, right?
It can be really sneaky. You don't even realize it's happening sometimes.
It's like we're constantly categorizing ourselves and other women as good or bad.
And those categories are based on these external, often male-defined standards,
And it creates this pressure to seek male approval as like the ultimate validation.
which is so messed up when you think about it.
It is, and it leads to this never-ending cycle of trying to be the right kind of woman.
And of course, never quite feeling good enough.
Exactly, because the definition of good keeps changing depending on who you're trying to please.
And it's exhausting. And ultimately, it holds us back from truly embracing ourselves.
So true, it's like we're constantly trying to fit into a mold that wasn't even made for us.
And that feeling of never being good enough ties into this next pressure that Williams explores, the pressure to have it all.
Ugh, the myth of balance.
Right. And it's everywhere, you know?
Oh yeah, it's like this constant barrage of advice.
Get a bullet journal. Start a side hustle. Add adaptogens to your smoothie.
And it's all supposed to help us manage our already overflowing lives.
It's insane. And then you look at social media.
Don't even get me started.
It's all these curated feeds of perfect lives.
Immaculate homes, perfectly behaved children.
Everyone's doing yoga at sunrise and cooking gourmet meals.
It's exhausting just to look at it.
And it sets these completely unrealistic expectations.
Oh, absolutely.
Like Williams talks about creating this elaborate toddler sensory bin based on an influencer's post.
Pinterest worthy, right?
Totally. And her son was completely uninterested.
He was more fascinated by a stick he found in the yard.
Exactly. And it's such a perfect illustration of the disconnect between this idealized image and the reality of everyday life.
Right, because life is messy and unpredictable, and that's okay.
It is, and trying to achieve this mythical level of perfection across every area of our lives is just setting ourselves up for failure.
And burnout.
And speaking of feeling not okay, let's talk about the pressure to be positive all the time.
Ah, yes, toxic positivity.
Because we're often told to just look on the bright side even when we're going through really tough times.
And that can be so invalidating.
It is, because it denies us the space to process our emotions authentically.
Williams talks about her experience with multiple miscarriages and how she felt this pressure to find the silver lining.
Right, like she was supposed to be grateful for something in the midst of profound grief.
And that's so harmful because it prevents us from actually healing.
Exactly, and it can lead to this grief denial, which just compounds the pain.
And it's not just about external pressure. Sometimes we put that pressure on ourselves, too.
Right, when we try to spin things positively for other people's comfort.
And in the process, we end up silencing our own needs.
So true, and that brings us to this reevaluation of productivity and self-care.
Okay, love this.
Because these terms have become so buzzworthy, but they're often misconstrued.
Totally. And Williams offers such a refreshing perspective.
Like, she challenges the traditional definition of productivity, especially in the context of motherhood and caregiving.
Because so much of that labor is invisible, it doesn't fit into these neat metrics.
And she talks about seeing this sign that said, "This is productive," in a space where people were caring for newborns.
And it was such a powerful reminder that nurturing and caring for others is deeply productive, even if it's not always recognized by society.
It is, it's essential work. And then there's self-care, which has become so
Really?
commodified.
It's all about expensive face masks and spa treatments.
And Williams really pushes back against that. She emphasizes that true self-care is about meeting your basic needs.
Getting enough sleep, eating nourishing food, moving your body.
Setting boundaries, prioritizing your mental health.
It's about valuing yourself intrinsically, not as a means to an end.
And she points out that this commercialized version of self-care often puts the onus on women to fix themselves.
Without addressing the systemic issues that are contributing to burnout and stress in the first place.
Exactly. So it's like putting a Band-Aid on a much deeper wound.
So true. And it's not sustainable in the long run.
Okay, so if this constant striving and the pressure to have it all are so detrimental, what are the alternatives?
Well, Williams offers some really empowering solutions.
Starting with self-acceptance and letting go of all those shoulds that weigh us down.
Yes, it's about embracing your imperfection.
Releasing those rigid identities and expectations that don't serve you.
She has this amazing quote where she says, "You do not have to be who other people think you are. You don't even have to be who you think you are."
Isn't that great? It's so liberating.
It really is. It's about giving yourself permission to evolve and change.
And she shares this story about deciding to downsize her home.
Because homeownership wasn't actually fulfilling for her.
Right, it wasn't aligned with her true values and needs.
And it was a really tough decision.
It was, but it was about choosing what truly brought her peace, even if it went against societal expectations.
And that's such a powerful message. It's okay to walk away from things that no longer serve you.
Exactly, and she makes this distinction between walking away and giving up.
Like walking away can actually be a sign of growth.
It is. It's about having the self-awareness to recognize when a path is no longer right for you and the courage to choose a different one.
And that takes a lot of strength.
And finally, Williams emphasizes the importance of supportive female friendships.
Yes, this is so crucial.
Because these relationships offer unconditional love and acceptance.
They provide a safe space to be vulnerable and authentic.
And they can be such a powerful counterforce to the negativity and judgment that we often encounter in the world.
She talks about her close friend Star and the incredible bond they share.
And it's really inspiring to see how they support each other through thick and thin.
It's a beautiful example of the power of female friendship.
And a reminder that we don't have to go through this journey alone.
We need each other.
So true. Well, this has been such an insightful deep dive into Kate Williams's How to Stop Trying.
I agree. It's a book that really speaks to the challenges and triumphs of being a woman in today's world.
We would love to hear your thoughts on this episode. What resonated with you? What are your takeaways?
Share your comments below. Let's keep this conversation going.
And for a final thought to ponder, what's one should that you could let go of today?
What's one thing you could release that's no longer serving you?
Give yourself permission to explore that possibility without judgment.
And see what happens.
Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.